Welcome to A Balanced Life on the Go. I'm Dr. Nicole Lindsay, your host on this podcast, along with Dr. Brian Jeanette. This is a podcast designed to help connect you to a more balanced life on the go. Each week, we will bring you simple, concise, and easy to implement ideas, tips, and strategies to help you connect to better nutrition, movement, and thinking so you can achieve balance in your busy life. Isn't this what life is all about? Trying to achieve balance so that we can be healthy, happy, and live to our fullest potential. We're glad you joined us. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. This is Back in Balance, Balanced Life on the Go. Our topic today is, what is chiropractic?
What is chiropractic, and what does chiropractic do? What's the main role and function of a chiropractor?
This is such a great topic, and this is why we want you to start off our podcast series with this episode, so you can get a really good foundation for what we do and how we can best help you. Before we do that, we always have to look at Dr. Brian's socks to see what he's wearing, because they always get us jazzed and pumped up for these podcasts.
These are my
black and white
Joe DiMaggio baseball socks.
Very
Got
nice.
a picture of Joe DiMaggio on both sides, so trying to channel my inner baseball legend.
Love it. Love it. Perfect day for that today, too.
It's beautiful outside.
So, we're going to jump in. On this podcast, we like to give you general information, and then we always end it with something practical, something that you can do today.
Your action step.
Your action step, because we know your life is busy, and we want to help you keep a balanced, healthy life while you're busy and while you're on the go. So, you probably have been to a chiropractor, or you've searched chiropractic on Google, or heard about a family member that went to a chiropractor, and you may have heard the word subluxation.
It's a big word that gets thrown around a lot. Some chiropractors talk about the subluxation often. Other chiropractors don't mention it at all. And this is because it can be a very challenging word to define, right? A lot of the patients, a lot of you guys that are probably listening to this right now, when you hear the word chiropractor, you think neck pain and back pain. And in the most simplest, easiest of terms, that is what chiropractic does to help you with your life, to help your quality of life. Takes care of your neck pain, takes care of your back pain. But you were just scratching the surface. There's so much more depth to what chiropractic does than just musculoskeletal pain.
Yes. We do work on your back, because that's where your spine is located, your back and your neck. But in reality, there's so much more going on, and we're going to start with that system that we work with. It is the central nervous system. It's your brain and your spinal cord. That is what your central nervous is comprised of. And that happens to be the master control system, like the hard drive of your computer. Your computer can't function without it.
Mm-hmm. It's what tells your heart to beat. It's what tells your lungs to breathe. It's what tells the rest of your body to make the neurotransmitters and the hormones and where to put them.
Exactly. And you can also take the example of a house with a power panel box. You ever had something go wrong in the house? Where's the first place you go to look?
Breaker box.
The breaker box, right? And you look for the switches, and you see did any one of them flip off, and you flip it back, and boom, you've got power again. Well, the nervous
system... Too many
system,
blow dryers going on at once, it overloads that system. And the same thing can happen to the human body. We have too much going on at once in the nervous system, and it can end up overloading.
Yeah, so let's break down the anatomy. We'll come back to subluxation and define that so you understand. But before we get there, let's talk about the anatomy of the spine and a spinal segment. And that way you can picture what's happening here. Your spine consists of vertebra, bones that come together. And a joint or a spinal segment is made up of two vertebra and the joint that connects them. So you have, in between the two bones, you have a disc. And that happens to be a cushion, a shock absorber, very important part of your spine. We treat a lot of disc injuries in our office. But then connecting the two bones, you have what are called facet joints. And it's part of the bone from one bone on top that connects to the bone below.
This is where we get a lot of the motion in our spine. A lot of the motion, all of the motion actually, in our spine goes through these facet joints. And when a chiropractor does a chiropractic adjustment on your spine, that's what causes the popping sound. We actually release the gas that's built up, the pressure that's built up in there, and that popping sound is just a release of gas.
Yes, and it happens for mostly everybody, so it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or that you're a gassy person.
Yeah, it's a totally natural phenomenon that should happen.
Yes.
When you lose that ability, you step away from normal and become abnormal.
Exactly. So the bones are the armor. They protect your spinal cord that's running through the center of this spinal column. You have your brain, of course, that's all the way at the top. That is your hard drive. The spinal cord connects to the brain and travels through the center of these spinal segments, and a spinal column is created. This is what we work on, and that spinal cord, it's really a highway for your nerves, carrying information between your brain and your body all the time.
This is an information superhighway. The information, the chemical information, the electrical information going from the brain to the organs, to the joints, to the muscles, to the ligaments. This is happening at hundreds of miles an hour. This is an information superhighway. And if any part of this highway gets clogged, has a roadblock, damage, car crash, whatever, we just we slow down that information.
Yes, and off of the spinal cord, you have nerves that branch off at every level. The neck, your thoracic spine, and your lower back, your lumbar spine. And these nerves, they branch off and they connect to the organs, to your heart, your lungs, your liver, to your immune cells, your white blood cell. Every cell of your body is connected to a nerve.
They're all getting information from these nerves. They extend off the left side of the spine, they extend off the right side of the spine, and then other nerves extend off of those nerves. And then those nerves extend off other nerves.
Exactly. So your ability to move your baby toe, your ability to digest that sandwich you ate for lunch, your ability to see what's in front of you is all controlled by the brain. That is, the information is communicated through the spinal cord, out through the nerves to the cells of your body. Now, sometimes we can get some stress that overloads our system, and this stress can be emotional, can be
mental,
worry. Right now, we happen to be at this time in a pandemic, right? A lot of stress, their emotional stress. It can be chemical, can be the sunblock you're putting on your skin that's unhealthy. It can be
food that we're taking in. It can be alcohol that we're consuming. It can be medication that we're consuming.
It can be structural. It can be from a car accident you had 10 years ago, a sports injury.
Repetitive motion.
Sitting all day.
At a desk for 40 hours. Now sitting at home in your work chair, not your workstation. That's less comfortable.
And then it can be electromagnetic stress, which is the being in front of devices. All these electromagnetic frequencies that are coming at you all the time, which is interesting. I was just listening to a different podcast all on this the other day, and years ago, I can't remember exactly how many years ago, the Earth vibrated at a certain frequency, and that frequency was at a number 7, and now it's registering at 25 to 30, and this definitely has an effect on our cells, on human beings. So this is creating stress in our body, and when we get an overload of it, our brain cannot handle that information coming in. And this is basically what a subluxation is, because then what happens is that you get this negative information that's sent back down through your nerves and to parts of the body, and ill health will result.
You can also define this negative information as an incomplete picture. The puzzle pieces aren't put together properly, and your body has to fill in the blanks with what it thinks and what it suspects. And oftentimes, your body's going to default to this state of protection, the state of helping your body preserve energy and preserve itself, so it's survivability.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're trying to do, is adapt to the stress of our environment all the time. And your health is determined on how well you adapt to the stress in your environment. Whether it's really hot out right now and you're in an air-conditioned room and you walk outside, can your body adapt to that change in temperature? That's a stressful thing. If the flu there's an outbreak in your place of employment and you go into work, can you walk through that building and not get the flu? Your ability to adapt to the viruses that are around you has everything to do with the strength of your internal environment, to your nervous system. So what we're doing is looking for these compromised areas in your body that is causing an issue, causing an interrupt in your nervous system, where your immune system might not be as healthy. Your muscles may not be contracting the way they need to be. Your posture is constantly off because your brain is sending faulty information all the time.
The nerves that go to your organs, your heart, your lungs, your stomach, your kidneys, your large intestine, your small intestine, those nerves might not be functioning at 100%. And when those nerves don't function at 100%, we really feel that taxation on the organ system itself. We heavily 100% rely on our nervous system, the way that the nervous system transmits signals from our brain, from the specific parts of our brain, through our brainstem, through our spinal cord, and then out. When we have problems with this, we have a compromised neural integrity. And this compromised neural integrity actually reduces our neuroplasticity, which is our ability to build and reformat and reshape neurons. Well, we have to constantly do that. You know the old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's because as we age, we have more and more stressors on the body that negatively impact our nervous system, that negatively impact our neuroplasticity.
Yes. And, this is really cool when you think about how your brain works. If you have never had a biology course, or some of the courses that we have going through chiropractic school, we got to dissect human brains. We really got to learn the anatomy and the physiology and all of this information in detail. But if you've never had that opportunity, you may have never really asked yourself or really looked this up, but what your brain is doing at all times is it is taking in information through your senses, through your skin, through your eyes, through your ears, through your muscles, even through your movement. Your movement is actually sensory information. So your brain is reading your environment. It's feeling it, seeing it, smelling it, tasting it all the time. That information is being sent to your brain. Now there's parts of your brain that are responsible for taking that information and integrating it and turning it into something. And what happens a lot of times is your brain will look for past experiences and will then fill in the gaps for you, which is really cool. And that's why oftentimes we will judge, we'll have kind of a prejudgment on something, or we'll know what to do before we get there, because our brain has seen something similar and it will fill in the gaps. And then you have your own virtual reality, which is very cool. So what's in front of you is what's in front of you, with only what you see based on your life, what you're taking in, and how your brain's perceiving it. And it might be different from what the person next to you is experiencing. Absolutely. Which is a very interesting concept.
Yeah, and it's such a true concept. When we lack the ability to take in information and process it at a very high degree, This actually starts very, very small. Now, the thing about change is very small, and it takes a very long time for us to notice that change has taken place. Now, if we want to like extrapolate this out to the very most extreme cases of this, these are our patients that have psychological breaks. These are our patients that have some sort of psychosis or inability to cope with reality, or their perception of reality is not even remotely accurate. Their nervous system, their organs, all the things that Dr. Nicole just mentioned, are taking in this information, and it's going up to the brain, and their brain cannot process it in a healthy or structure-based way. Now, this happens to everybody. Obviously not to that severity or that degree of illness, but this is how this starts. It starts by step one. It starts 1 inch at a time, your body taking in this information, processing it, and then getting backed up. And then it continues to get backed up, and then it continues to get backed up. And what happens with that, instead of going to the specific structures of the brain that are meant to integrate this process, your brain rewires itself and puts it to other parts of the brain, other structures of the brain that aren't meant to handle that load.
Yes. And it is the amazing thing about the human body and the brain is that the brain can change itself. It can reorganize itself in response to what's being taken in, but this may not necessarily be good. So for example, if you have a job where you sit at a computer and you type and you're hunched over 8 hours a day, I hear this at least
5 times a week.
Yeah. This is repetitive muscular activity. That input is being put into your brain constantly. Your posture, your position, all of that external input is being put into the brain, and this will then reorganize the brain. The brain then sends information back to the body telling those muscles tighten up, and lack of oxygen, all of this stuff starts happening, which is not necessarily a good thing.
Your brain is going to force your body to adapt to the situation that it is in. If it is under a constant load or a constant stressor, your brain is going to acknowledge that and force the body to adapt through the nervous system, regardless if it is a healthy situation or an unhealthy situation. Like Dr. Nicole talked about, sitting at a desk hunched over for 40 hours a week, that's an unhealthy situation. But you're doing it, you're constantly doing it. When you're in those positions, your body is constantly sending information up to the brain, and your brain is going to do everything in its absolute power to help your body and the rest of the nervous system adapt to that, for better or for worse.
Yeah, and here's another thing to think about. If your spine is out of alignment because of a stress, because of a misalignment from a car accident that you had, now the bone, the segments that we talked about, right, the two bones and the disc that make up a joint, they're not moving like they should. Maybe they're not moving enough. Maybe they're moving too much. They're hypermobile. Irregardless, there's a problem at those segments. So because movement is one of those senses and your brain relies on that information, well, guess what? The information that's sent back to the brain from that segment is going to be altered. It's not going to be pure. It's not going to be accurate. It's not going to be as much sensory, healthy information as it could be if those segments were moving at 100%.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we know about this and why this is very much accurate and very much true is because the part of the brainstem, the part of the spinal cord that controls the movement in our legs, our lower extremities, that controls the movement in our arms or our upper extremities, takes up a massive part of our spinal column because movement is so important. That's one of our primary senses in which we gain information. Think about being on a very long car ride, cross-country road trip, 10, 20, 30 hours. You're stuck in that one spot for so long, you lose the ability to understand and gain your senses and gain your surroundings.
Yes. So what does the adjustment do? How does the adjustment affect the subluxation and your brain? Well, that's an excellent question, and fortunately we have the answer because that's what we do for a living. But what the adjustment does, what we're doing is we're restoring normal movement patterns in those segments that are stuck and not moving correctly. So we're feeling your spine. You come in, we do an x-ray, and we see a pattern in your cervical spine, in your curve, that's reversed. We do a motion study, and we see that you have 6 segments that are not moving. They're stuck. So you also have symptoms in that area, neck pain and headaches. So we know that you have a subluxation. You have segments that are not moving correctly. This information is being sent back to your brain, and it's incorrect information. It's not healthy because the sensory information, the input, is not at 100%, not where it needs to be.
And that always creates a negative change in the body or a negative information highway.
And negative changes to your brain as well. So what we're doing is when we give an adjustment and restoring normal movement patterns is we're actually helping to create better input to your brain, to your central nervous system, allowing your spinal cord, your brainstem, and your brain to process information along that highway in a meaningful and coherent way.
One of the coolest aspects to what we're talking about right now is how well this is documented in the literature. Mainly the way that we do this is by doing functional MRIs and CT scans, and we can see, or PET scans as well, and we can see the parts of the brain that light up when we give an adjustment. We can see adjusting the neck or adjusting the middle back or adjusting the lower back, how that sends information up to the brain and how it lights it up and how it starts to restore that function.
Yeah, so chiropractic care actually influences your brain function. Isn't that cool?
I mean, super, very cool. We talk about the difference between chiropractors and the chiropractic doctor and the medical doctor. A medical doctor can prescribe you medication for any number of illnesses or diseases. They're only going to be able to prescribe you with this medication once this disease has already firmly rooted itself in your body. If we can help your body adapt, think about autoimmune diseases. You go through, if you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, you go through 2 weeks, you go through 2 months, you go through 2 years of testing and going back and forth and talking to many doctors until you're finally diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Well, the problem and the symptoms started 2 years ago, but the disease itself didn't run enough of its course to be diagnosed or detected until 2 years later. Your body instinctively knew something was going on 2 years prior to your diagnosis.
And that's pretty much the same with any symptom. You know, the symptom is usually the very last thing to show up when there's a problem.
The symptom is always the last thing.
Low back pain, headaches, neck pain, you name it. It's usually the very last thing. So when we get you under care, it's often quite fast that we help you get rid of the symptom. But in order to really influence the brain and the neurology, the neurological pattern that's been set up in your system, it takes time to correct that. And that's where therapy, exercises, really retraining the brain so that your body's postural patterns change to a healthier one make all the difference.
One of the easiest ways to do this is 1, through the chiropractic adjustment, 2, through some of the things that Dr. Nicole just mentioned, the exercises, the soft tissue work, the other rehab that we do, and then another thing called neuromuscular reeducation. Now, this neuromuscular reeducation actually retrains and readapts the nervous system similar to what the adjustment does, but we're actually focusing on a soft tissue connection when we do that.
Yes, and I think it's important to talk about this during this podcast because so many people are focused on the muscles. When they come in, they think they just tweak their muscle and they just need a quick adjustment and they'll be on their way.
I can't tell you how many times people come in and said, I pulled a muscle in my back and I know deep down in my gut It's not a muscle.
Yes. And it is true. Muscles attach to bone. So when you have a subluxated segment, a segment that is not moving like it should, not enough or too much, then those muscles that attach to those bones are not going to be moving as much either.
The really small muscles that actually attach and surround the spine are these paraspinal muscles, and these are the ones that we're mainly focusing on, because these are the muscles that are mainly damaged when we have an injury, a trauma, a repetitive motion, or lack of motion.
Yes, and here's the important thing about these muscles, is that inside of these muscles is a tiny brain or eyes, and that's called a muscle spindle. And these muscle spindles that are inside of the muscles, they are communicating to the brain all the time. Now, if that muscle cannot be stretched enough like it can in normal movement, then the information from the muscle cannot be sent to the brain. So what your brain will do, because it will try and adapt, is that it will fill in the gaps itself. Now, this is a problem because it may not be correct information, and this can lead to mistakes or accidents like falls, injuries, balance problems. For example, you may have this scenario happen where you have a segment that's subluxated, the muscle's not moving correctly in your back, in your lower back, and you go to bend over to pick something, that segment's not moving correctly, the muscle spindle cannot stretch. So what happens is you herniate or bulge a disc because you're twisting, turning, and lifting incorrectly when you weren't aware that that was a problem. But now your brain cannot protect you.
And think about that for a second. We have over 600 muscles in our body, and each of these muscles and each of these little segments, each of these muscle fibers have a muscle spindle. So that means there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of muscle spindles in our body constantly sending nerve impulses to our spinal cord and to our brain. And a lot of the times these are dysfunctional. They're not sending the proper information back. And this is where we get tight muscles. This is where we get trigger points. This is where you get that local pain that says, "Doc, it hurts right here, but when I press on it, it makes it go away a little bit, but I can't quite stretch it. It's just tight. I stretch it no matter what I do, it doesn't go away." You can't stretch the muscle and make it go away when it's a nervous system problem.
Exactly. We have to address the whole thing. So, and we do. We not only address the muscle in this office, but we will work on the segments that are stuck or hypermobile. We will work on retraining your nervous system to correct the problem and the postural problems that got you here in the first place.
Yeah. Here's the thing with that, though, is it took potentially a lifetime to get there. Change does happen very slowly, and your body doesn't want to make quick changes because it needs that training, it needs that chance to adapt to a situation. So what might have taken you 10, 20 years to get to that spot, it's not going to take you 1 to 2 days to reverse that.
That's right.
And that's so important for us to remember as human beings, because we have in the 21st century instant gratification.
Yes. We have to remember healing takes time. And correction takes time as well. What about pain? Pain and the brain. If the pain is gone, am I good? Am I good?
No. Pain, like I said, pain is the last symptom to appear and the first symptom to go away.
Yes, and pain is often one of those things that we use in Western medicine to determine whether we're healthy or not. And if we have no pain, we think we're good, we're healthy. But this is important not to just rely on pain as the only indicator of health. Look at range of motion, the health of your muscles. Do you have trigger points, posture, digestion, sleep?
Say, I care how your sleep is. I care how you're able to move and get around your house. We care, I should say, how you're able to do your hobbies. Just because you don't have any pain anymore, does that mean that you can go back and doing the things that you love doing? You might not have pain, but you still can't do those things.
Yes.
Why is that?
Yes. And here's the thing about symptoms, too. Symptoms are there for a reason. Symptoms are your brain's attempt to tell you that something is not right. So in essence, what's happening when you have a symptom is your brain is struggling to make sense of the miscommunication. And everything's going haywire, and now you have a sign. So instead of just covering it up, taking medication can alter this even more. Try and trace it back and figure out what your brain is trying to tell you.
Let's talk for a second about the most common symptoms that we have where our body is telling us, like, red flags, man. Come on, what are you doing? Pain, lack of sleep, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. These are all symptoms. You might eat something that you don't like, and your body is telling you, hey, pay attention. You don't like this Big Mac. I'm going to cause a lot of bathroom problems for you right now. Then we get over it, and then humans have a very short-term memory.
For sure.
I have a very short-term memory.
Yes.
I forget about that, how my body reacted, and that my body gave me that symptom, and then I continue going back to it. Well, what happens is we continue to do that repetitively over and over and over, a dozen times, 100 times, a million times, and then our brain eventually creates that change or adaptation to the body. And now it's a permanent problem that we have to work even more diligently to reduce or reverse.
Yes, it's kind of scary how people wear their symptoms and their diagnosis like a
badge of honor.
Yes, and it's your body can change, your body can heal, and the bottom line is, and then the whole point of this podcast is that we want you to know that chiropractic care restores spinal function. That's what chiropractic care does, which actually changes the way your brain functions. That is it in a nutshell. I mean, it's way more complicated, but every time you come in here for a chiropractic adjustment, we are restoring normal function in your spine, which changes the way your brain works. And this is a process, so be patient with yourself, be patient with chiropractic. Our one action step for you today would be, number one, if you have a chiropractor, make an appointment to go see them. Get your tune-up. Don't wait until something hurts. Make sure you get adjusted. Get your spine checked. Get adjusted to help stimulate healthier brain function. If you don't have a chiropractor and you're listening to this, get one. Do yourself a favor and make an appointment and get your spine checked. See if you can enhance your neural integrity. I bet you can. I bet you can. So that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.